forward, please. Right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Ignatius Jean, Executive Director at the Caribbean Water and Sewage Association, and we would like to welcome all our friends and colleagues to our Wednesday webinar. And today we have a guest out of Canada who will treat us to a presentation on green rainwater infrastructure at the City of Vancouver, Canada. And she's Heidi Horlacher, and she's going to tell us a little about herself first because I didn't get the brief from Valerie, and my apologies for that. So you go ahead, Heidi. Welcome on board.
Thanks so much. And the volume's okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Thank you for the warm welcome. My name is Heidi Horlacher. I am a professional geoscientist and project manager from the city of Vancouver in Canada. And in that location, I work in the engineering department in our green infrastructure team. So I currently am focused on working on green infrastructure, the care and the implementation of that kind of stormwater infrastructure. But I've worked for over 20 years in the field of environmental outcomes. So that has included doing water quality studies, working on soil and air quality. And with that kind of background, I turned my attention just over 5 years ago to this area of green infrastructure. So I really look forward to sharing with you today a little bit more about what we're doing on this type of this stormwater asset in Vancouver. So I gave you a little bit about me, and the next thing I'm going to cover um, here in Canada, we like to start our meetings with a land acknowledgement, and that is a way of recognizing the Indigenous people from this place and their connection to the lands that we now occupy. So, in that spirit, I'm going to share a story with you about a reconciliation project that we worked on that involved green stormwater infrastructure. In March of 2019, our Museum of Vancouver hosted a Reconciled Futures Art Camp, and 9 Indigenous youth that were between the ages of 12 and 17 took part. They attended some workshops and exhibits, they met special guests, and they were mentored while designing their own sculptures, which featured local birds and salmon. You can see them in the slide here. These sculptures were then prepared by our City of Vancouver metalwork crews and installed by our street operations crews in this rain garden plaza that is very close to our offices at 63rd Avenue and Yukon Street. So this we recognize as an act of reconciliation, and it's a way that the City of Vancouver is trying to uphold the intentions of the United Nations Declaration for the Rights of Indigenous Peoples by reflecting the First Nations cultures in our public realm. Now, I understand that you are all located in the Caribbean, which is very exciting, not a place I've ever been to, but would love to visit one day. And for your reference, the city I live in is on the west coast of Canada in the province of British Columbia. So this is simply a map of Canada, which is a large country. I think we're still maybe the second largest to Russia in terms of a sovereign nation at the north part of North America. And within that area, here is Vancouver. It's the largest area in what we call the Metro Vancouver area, and it's home to a diverse and growing population. We have a high proportion of renters, newcomers, and students, and many of these residents can face economic and social vulnerabilities, and that can make them disproportionately affected by climate-related health risks. So the city recognized that addressing these challenges would take equitable solutions to ensure that all the communities in our city can adapt and thrive to these changing conditions. As well, we are a coastal city, and Vancouver is surrounded by breathtaking temperate rainforests and that shapes our reputation for mild and wet weather. Our annual rainfall varies. It averages around 1,200 millimeters in the south of our city and can reach up to 1,800 millimeters in the north. And that further influences our local climate resilience strategies. So, why are we using green infrastructure? Well, I wanted to set the stage by telling you about a particular weather event we had. In June 2021, our entire province of British Columbia experienced a heat dome with the temperatures over several days soaring up to 20 degrees Celsius above the normal. The town of Lytton, British Columbia, which is to the interior from Vancouver, recorded Canada's highest ever temperature at 49.6 degrees Celsius on June 29th. Following the event, the BC Coroner's Service confirmed that there had been 619 heat-related deaths in our province, and of those, 117 were in the city of Vancouver. And that made it the deadliest weather event in Canadian history. Most of these deaths occurred indoors, particularly in neighborhoods that lack green space. Vulnerable populations, especially adults that were over 50 that had chronic health conditions, they were disproportionately affected. So, experiencing this heat dome underscored the urgent need for us to work on climate resilience and mitigation strategies. One key recommendation of that report by our coroner was that municipalities should protect and restore the urban tree canopy and the permeable surfaces that could absorb rainwater. This, oh, sorry, flipped ahead. This acknowledged the large role that green stormwater infrastructure can play in converting hard urban surfaces into permeable ones that allow rainwater to soak into the ground, make it more readily available for evaporative cooling, and support the use of water by the trees. Like many cities worldwide, Vancouver is grappling with climate change challenges. There's rising sea levels. We experience drought in the summers. There's urban heat, as mentioned. We have extreme rainfall events, flooding, and worsening air quality due to forest fires. These issues are not distant threats. They are present for us and they're intensifying. And they've brought about serious urban health risks that include heat-related illnesses, respiratory and cardiovascular diseases, and psychological impacts. And at the same time, Vancouver is a rapidly growing city. So we have aging infrastructure to think about, we have increasing density of population, and we have more people joining us all the time. Recognizing that there's a powerful intersection to be seen at the nexus of public health, ecosystem resilience, and climate adaptation, Vancouver saw an opportunity to transform its approach. And in 2019, our City Council unanimously endorsed the Rain City strategy. It was a bold commitment to radically expand the use of green stormwater infrastructure. Since then, we've had additional policy frameworks come into place, including our citywide Vancouver Plan and the Healthy Waters Plan. And these have reinforced the city's focus on climate action and ecosystem restoration for our city. So there is already a great deal of evidence and research that shows the value of nature and natural processes being included in our dense urban environments. Green infrastructure delivers a multitude of benefits beyond conveying great rainwater, and these are often referred to as co-benefits. These co-benefits play a vital role in strengthening social determinants of health by fostering cohesive communities, encouraging physical activity, and promoting positive social interactions. Green infrastructure helps create healthier, more connected urban environments. And by strengthening these nearby communities, these improvements can help reduce illness and mortality, and that can lead to lower healthcare costs. So investing in healthier urban environments is not only a benefit for individuals, but it also creates long-term societal and economic advantages. So my next slide is going to speak to the wastewater operators in the room, probably. One key health-related infrastructure challenge for Vancouver is that we have largely combined sewer systems. So unlike modern designs that separate sanitary and stormwater flows, Vancouver's older system directs both into a single pipe. While sanitary flows will normally reach wastewater treatment plants, when we have rainfall, that overwhelms the system. It can cause the untreated mixtures of stormwater and sewage to overflow directly into local water bodies. That's an event known as a combined sewer overflow. So, to safeguard environmental and public health, Vancouver is actively working to eliminate CSOs, and this will help us align with regulatory requirements and enhance our local water quality. Water quality issues have tangible consequences for local communities, and I'm sure in the Caribbean you're really aware of that. Periodic no swimming advisories at our beaches highlight the concern for ongoing pollution to the waters. And for decades in our region, it's been unsafe to harvest shellfish. This is more than just an environmental challenge. This represents the loss of an important cultural practice. As I'd mentioned, we've had many local First Nations in this region, and for thousands of years, they relied on shellfish harvesting as a vital tradition, and they were deeply connected to this in their way of life. The local Tsleil-Waututh Nation, known as the people of the inlet, they had a saying, "When the tide went out, the table was set." So it's really important in Vancouver that we embed reconciliation with these First Nations in our work on water quality. Health outcomes for Indigenous people in Canada have been disproportionately affected by systemic racism, and this highlights the urgent need for meaningful change. So, for over a decade, Vancouver has been actively working to improve our cultural competencies and deepen our understanding of First Nations perspectives. And as I mentioned, we have embraced the UNDRIP from the United Nations and created our own action plan, which was adopted in 2024 to prioritize an integrated water management approach that would help to safeguard and enhance our local waters, which really aligns with the Indigenous stewardship values around water for our region. So, with that context of Vancouver in mind, what exactly do we mean by green infrastructure? So, at its core, green infrastructure leverages vegetation, soils, and engineered systems to mimic natural processes for managing rainwater. Beyond this effective stormwater management, this approach offers a range of co-benefits. It can enhance urban resilience, it improves public health, as mentioned, and creates more vibrant and livable spaces. By integrating nature into our built urban environment, cities can foster sustainability and address these climate challenges head on. So, this will be familiar to many on the call, but cities have traditionally relied on gray infrastructure, which would be considered an underground, usually, network of pipes that direct runoff to outfalls and that go directly to receiving waters. And that's how rainwater was traditionally managed. So while this has been an effective way to move runoff, these systems are built to last 80 to 100 years, and it makes them less adaptable to the evolving climate challenges and our urban priorities. Now we're expanding our approach by integrating green infrastructure to complement these traditional systems. So these are now surface-based solutions that create new rainwater pathways, and they offer greater flexibility in response to changing conditions. Beyond adaptability, GSI serves multiple functions. A single investment can deliver widespread benefits. It can enhance our climate resilience, it can improve public health, and it supports these broader priorities while supporting natural ecosystems. Okay, hopefully you can see this little video. So this is an example of what our green infrastructure does. So although we work at all scales, this is a smaller asset that is functioning during a moderate rainfall event. We constructed this bioretention asset. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Oh, good. We constructed this on an existing street when some road work had to be done and put in 3 bioretention bulges at that time. So these features efficiently manage 3,100 cubic meters of rainfall annually, and they also create small pockets of biodiversity that enhance both the ecological health and urban resilience. And when we were building these assets, we had neighbors that would pass us quite consistently and to talk about how important it was for them to be able to see the plants and the color on their walk every day. So, in the realm of green infrastructure tools, there's a wide range, and these are all available at a variety of scales and built forms. And there's some of the typical ones are listed here on the slide. As you can see, not all of them have a green expression, so they don't all have vegetated plants, vegetation or trees. For example, those detention tanks might be installed under a large area like a playing field, and porous asphalt could be a selection for a parking lot for a shopping center, things like that. So for areas where reducing urban heat is a priority, we would select vegetated options that can hold moisture, hold soil moisture. Those would be prioritized. To date, we have constructed over 400 assets in Vancouver's streets and public spaces in 5 different categories. And we've been building GI in Vancouver for over 20 years. Since the creation of our team, of the Green Infrastructure Implementation Team, and adoption of that Rain City strategy, we've really ramped up our implementation rate. And we've also took the time to upgrade our design standards and put some central programs in place that will help protect the longevity of these systems and their success to come. So now that we've explored why Vancouver has embraced green infrastructure to build a healthier city, let's take a closer look at some of our recent projects and programs. Our largest installation to date is a blue-green system, and it's located on 8 blocks of Richard Street in downtown Vancouver. This is a heavily urbanized environment, so there's a lot of competition for street space. The project uses rainwater tree trenches that go underneath the bike lane that you can see on the left, along with permeable pavement that captures and cleans rainwater. The systems take up a small footprint above ground, so that makes them a good GI solution for a space-constrained area like this. Beyond the stormwater management components, this project planted 100 new street trees, and these offer cooling in some of the most tree deficit areas of our city, while also shading the cyclists as they pass by. This slide showcases the reconstruction of Quebec Street, which is near the site of our Expo 86, and still an interesting area of the city. So when redevelopment had been occurring in the area, as you can see, with new towers and coming along Quebec Street, this provided a valuable opportunity for us to integrate green infrastructure into the new streetscape. So we built bioswales and rainwater tree trenches to capture and treat the runoff from the busy arterial. These bioswales also featured weirs that would slow the water down and allow the plants in the garden to filter and absorb their moisture for improved stormwater management. Meanwhile, those rainwater tree trenches were located underneath the all ages and abilities bike lane, and that created additional soil volume and an ability to retain water, supporting healthier street trees while contributing to urban cooling. And in the earlier slide with the art by the young people, that was this Bioswale Plaza, which is located in the south part of the city. It was one of our first projects by us as a new branch back in 2018. And the plaza was designed to serve both environmental and community needs. So it features public seating, educational signage, and the public art that I showed you at the beginning of the presentation. This was guided by a community plan that had been determined in advance, and it addressed key priorities, including expanded access to green space, improved rainwater management, and enhanced neighborhood amenities. To achieve these goals, the design integrated innovative inlet systems, strategic planting schemes, and a sustainable approach to soil management. The soil on site was amended and reused to maximize the environmental benefit and cut down on greenhouse gases from transporting soil. We also have larger bioretention projects that serve as placemaking initiatives. These are cost-effective solutions that deliver multiple benefits. Working alongside our transportation group in engineering, we completed several street closure projects, transforming what were roadways into vibrant spaces for active transportation, walking and cycling, and green infrastructure. These projects don't just improve a single block, they can manage rainwater across larger areas while creating new opportunities for public engagement and education. And very recently, we've been completing the St. George Rainway. It has transformed 4 blocks of St. George Street into a multi-use streetscape that integrates rainwater management, again, vibrant public spaces, and active transportation. When it's complete, the project will filter 17,000 cubic meters of rainwater annually. That's the equivalent of 113,000 bathtubs. It's adding 35 new street trees, which will sequester 335 kilograms of carbon per year and provide much needed urban cooling. And it will introduce 1,300 square meters of native and climate adaptive plants to an area that was previously paved. This will create an ecological corridor that can support pollinators and small birds. The St. George Rainway began in 2008, and it was driven by a group of passionate local volunteers who sought to honor a historic waterway in their Mount Pleasant neighborhood. This grassroots effort was instrumental in shaping the vision and outcome of the project. Once it's completed, in addition to the services I already listed, the ring will also feature closure of 1.5 blocks to cars, expanding our green space and pedestrian accessibility, along with one-way traffic in the remaining blocks, which will improve flow while maintaining vehicle access. And there was removal of parking on 3 blocks, which is creating room for these enhanced streetscape features. It will also add an all ages and all abilities two-way bike lane, which runs the entire length of the street. And there'll be 7 seating areas available, which will be offering inviting spaces where people can rest and interact. An additional plaza will be located adjacent to the main thoroughfare of Broadway Street, and that will be able to foster more community connection with activities and programming. So by blending sustainability, accessibility, and public space enhancement, this rainway is a great example of how a nature-based solution can transform an urban space to be healthier and more vibrant. Now, this is another video. Not sure if it's, oh, here, yeah, there we go. Hopefully you can see that. So at its core, the rainway is designed to provide effective rainwater management. This video captures the rainway in action during a prolonged rain event. We had an atmospheric river on October 19th, 2024, which is an event for us that means several days of steady rain, bringing volumes of rain all at once that would usually take an entire month to arrive. Something you're probably familiar with in the Caribbean, but it's a bit of a new weather pattern for our region where intermittent showers has previously been a more normal kind of rain event. But without this infrastructure of the new rainway, much of this water could have overwhelmed the street, potentially contributing to localized flooding. Instead, you can see in the video that a nature-based solution here is helping us adapt to these new extreme weather events. The engineers really liked seeing the laminar flow going over the weir. All right. Well, as I mentioned, engagement was an important part of things. So education is key to achieving widespread adoption of green infrastructure. Many people are unaware of both the challenges that GI addresses and the benefits it can provide. So it's important to emphasize that these are not just pretty natural spaces, they're critical drainage infrastructure, and they support climate adaptation and urban resilience. To expand awareness beyond our traditional audiences of engineers and urban planners, we included some creative approaches to education and engagement, such as pop-up green infrastructure demonstrations, where we would bring these concepts to life in real-world settings, such as community events, life-sized rainwater-themed board games that made it learning fun and interactive, and BioBlitz events These were community events that could help the community track biodiversity by observing different species and helping them also connect with the local ecosystems that are all around them. We also took the time to make youth engagement packages, and these were targeted to school-age children or teenagers, and they were designed to spark interest in sustainability from an early age. So, to guide our planting plans for the St. George Rainway and our other projects, our team commissioned an ethnobotany study. This ensured that we could be able to select culturally significant indigenous species as part of our commitment to reconciliation. Beyond using this intentional planting, the bioretention gardens incorporate a diverse range of species, and that strengthens their root systems and enhances the ecosystem health. In addition, we use nurse logs, and that creates a vital habitat that can support biodiversity and resilience. Okay, so beyond those large-scale blue-green systems, the city has successfully implemented many small, localized assets, such as bioretention. And these are put into our corner bulges and boulevards. These are favored by our transportation engineers for traffic calming. And they also feature an ideal opportunity to integrate green infrastructure because you're enhancing not just the mobility of a street, but also its environmental aspects. By upgrading the spaces, now we're going beyond just a transportation service to include stormwater management, urban cooling, and an improved aesthetic. So for those people that on the call that are interested in exploring design strategies, we do have resources on our website that can help you look at how to design and standardize these assets. In collaboration with our urban forestry department, our branch is helping to mitigate urban heat by supporting the health of new street trees in a light industrial area of Terminal Avenue, where there is little green space. So to enhance the resilience, we've used soil cells and tree pits, as you can see on the left. And this helps to ensure that those trees in this area will now have access to adequate soil volume and water retention, which will really help them survive and thrive. This initiative directly responded to the recommendations from the BC coroner that followed that 2021 heat dome, reinforcing the need for cities to urgently take on cooling strategies for vulnerable urban areas. I mentioned young people in part of our outreach materials. Well, yes, we actively seek opportunities to build community partnerships around green infrastructure. So one recent success we had was the completion of a new park called Gibby's Field. So this was a couple of lots in a neighborhood in East Vancouver that are now existing as a newly naturalized park, featuring an ephemeral wetland, as you can see on the top left in the drone photo from the top. Because it was very close to a nearby elementary school, we collaborated with teachers and involved the students in hands-on learning throughout our design process. Their contributions included helping to seed Gibby's Field at the park opening and creating stencil artwork during a public engagement event. These kinds of nature-based connections foster physical and mental well-being for children who also bring that excitement and enthusiasm back to their own families. Various grants are available to help support these kinds of learning experiences here in Canada. So we were able to expand that community participation and environmental education in that way. It was also easier for us to have help from our local health authorities who could provide letters of support for funding applications such as this. And these kinds of things helped strengthen our proposals and reinforce that idea that there are broader health benefits available from these initiatives. Community connection emerged as a key priority when we asked our residents about their stewardship interests in the City of Vancouver. And being inspired by this feedback, we launched a new program this year called the Seeding Stewardship Program. And this was a support initiative that fostered meaningful connections to land, water, and community through hands-on care of nature-based solutions in local neighborhoods. By engaging residents in stewardship, this program strengthened their ecological awareness and deepened community ties. So I'll just touch on a couple of key challenges that we've been facing. And one of them would basically be to the need to transform our thinking to bring more naturalized spaces into our urban environments. Although the citizens of Vancouver are very supportive of an improved environment with more access to green space, the reduction of street parking that is sometimes required can be a challenge for residents when it arrives on their block. And as an example of the challenges that we're facing underneath the street, I've got a couple of cross sections here on the left. So this demonstrates that at this time we have to maintain offsets from existing utilities or foundations, and as these are the existing practice that are outlined in our water design guidance and in Canada's National Building Code. There are concerns that there will be issues for access for repairs and replacement to existing utilities. There's concern that there could be stormwater intrusion from a green infrastructure asset that could affect drinking water. Now, those are perceptions that are held, and we've been working hard to understand better what the level of risk is with these particular concerns. Water mains for a long time have had a 3-meter offset in Canada for any storm sewers, manholes, and anything that's interpreted as stormwater management. So as you can see on the left, that has really eliminated constructing GI in half of the right-of-way. Therefore, we've been working with our partners in water design on a site-by-site basis to use mitigating solutions such as liners to overcome the standard requirement. So with that, I just wanted to highlight a few main takeaways to leave you with. The first is that how we design our cities affects our well-being more than we probably previously accounted for. The city around us really affects how we feel and how our health outcomes, what health outcomes we have. The current and future challenges with our increased populations, extreme weather events, these are going to make it more important than ever to invest in nature in our cities and to make them more livable and resilient. There are definitely evidence-based actions that are going to lead to better health by using and embracing nature-based solutions in our cities. So we have to, however, revisit business as usual so that we can implement them urgently to respond to the climate change that is here. And with that, I would like to say thank you for your attention, and I would be happy to take questions.
Right. Thank you, Heidi, for this very comprehensive presentation and insights into what you're doing in Canada. And I think would have quite a bit of relevance in our parts. So the floor is open, colleagues. Feel free to pose any questions you have or comments.
I just wanted to put something in perspective. We have talked on these webinars before about the heat dome that we had in Vancouver. And as Heidi said, in 1 week period, we had 600 people die. Compare that with COVID, and over a 4-year period, there was 2,700 deaths. So 2,700 deaths over 4 years with a pandemic versus 600 that we lost in 1 week, including a good friend of mine. It was a horrible experience.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Valerie, for that perspective. It was really I wouldn't say out of the blue, but for us in a temperate city like ours, it was a real shock, obviously. So, yeah.
Yes, Don, go ahead.
I didn't raise my hand yet.
Oh, I heard your voice.
Yeah, I was waiting for other participants to first ask questions because I seem to be always the first one who jumps in, being excited about another fascinating presentation with strong relevance to the Caribbean. And actually, one of my first, no, actually, I did an internship at the University of Lungbu in Denmark
Mhm.
under Professor Harremeus, and we did studies on combined sewer flow
Mhm.
with the permeable surfaces
Mhm.
to reduce the OBS, the combined what do you call it?
We call it a CSO, combined sewer
CSO, for
overflow.
because combined sewer is common in Europe. Actually, it is common in temperate climates where the rainfall is moderate, not so
Mhm.
excessive as in the tropics. And it was quite significant. The relevance to the Caribbean is also that it significantly reduced the flood incidence, and we have a lot of flooding,
Mhm.
and having impermeable surfaces reduce the water that goes to the drainage system and cause floods downstream. So that is another aspect that might mention. I also think that the system you presented has a very high maintenance cost because all these plants need maintenance, cutting, weeding, carrying off. And that is also one of the issues when you have a reed bed as a wastewater treatment. The maintenance is you have to cut the weeds because the nutrients change into reeds, so you have to remove. So what is the maintenance cost
Yeah,
in
I'd be happy to talk about that. And I agree that that is a perception about, these more live systems. But what we're finding is that, in fact, we can, with preventative maintenance, we can come down to, 2 visits a year, 2, 3 visits a year at these bioretention um, locations. And compared to the amount of time we spend mowing the turf, it's actually not that intensive. And the other part that I would say we've discovered in bringing these systems online is that there are a lot of costs and requirements for the gray infrastructure system. They just aren't really always, I think expressed as carefully as we talk about. So the costs are in some ways more straightforward because the work that you're mentioning is work that can be kind of easily trained. People can be easily trained in it, and in our city we've been able to leverage some groups that have folks that might have different intellectual abilities, and this can present an option for them to have a meaningful job and have training in something that they're doing in their community. Um, and I know in other places, certainly workforce development is part of the like a kind of a whole community aspect to doing the maintenance.
But also having more green spaces in an urban environment is also important for general mental
Yes,
health of the people. You
absolutely. And I
see more
think that's,
green,
yeah,
and the school kids get involved. That is a significant improvement in itself.
right? We just don't have an easy way of talking about the money part of that.
Right. Yeah.
But if we took it in a holistic view, we see it as a very worthwhile investment that pays us back in many other ways. But we won't win if we just do it's not an apples to apples comparison with a traditional gray infrastructure system.
I have a number of issues I would like to raise, but again, I am monopolizing the
Okay.
seminar, so I really open the floor for other participants to give their perspective and ask questions, and especially connected to the Caribbean situation. So I will keep my
Thank you,
mouth shut
Tom.
for a few minutes, and I then have some more questions.
Thank
Very
you,
good.
Tom. Any other contributions, please feel free. I'm not seeing any hands up.
I'm not sure. I was wondering how relevant it feels if folks are mainly in the wastewater treatment plants. Oh, I see Kevin has a hand up.
Kevin,
So
please.
Oh, Thank you for a great presentation. Kevin Carter in Broward County, South Florida. And I've actually in a past life, I primarily worked with stormwater. So as some people know, I've had the opportunity to work the water cycle. And I actually, your point is actually part of what I was going to point out and ask you a question. In the U.S., the term one water is caught on like wildfire. It's essentially integrated water resource management, but one water sounds, I guess, more cool. But why I think this can relate to people that primarily work with water, drinking water, and wastewater systems is capturing stormwater, being able to recharge aquifers and have it through these natural systems helps cleanse it much more, and also helps with storage for your water supply. And then a lot of the folks we've had on this forum have talked about nature-based solutions, as Ton alluded to, for wastewater. And I think the two sectors can learn from each other and even commingle systems if necessary, depending on your waste streams. So if you could kind of speak to what you're seeing with one water, integrated water, however you'd like to call it, and in Canada, and how this relates to your great work.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. That's a great point. So in our particular city, we have the great benefit of having local watersheds that people 150 years ago set aside to capture the rainwater in huge reservoirs. So we don't have the same groundwater drink use requirement. That is really important in places like, I'm not sure about Florida, but certainly in the south of the US, rainwater capture would be a really important part of your water supply strategy. So these kinds of systems can be paired in policy with a lot of elements you could do on your site. And that includes rainwater capture, rainwater harvesting, and reuse. So in the city of Vancouver, we've certainly started to try to do more of that by reusing water in mainly plumbing systems that are not potable, but to irrigate vegetation, etc. And that has had some success. I'd say that because we have this rainforest setting, it's not come at us in as pointed a way as maybe some of the Caribbean islands. But the recharge of the aquifer is something people have really underappreciated. And so by sealing off our cities with a like a paved surface, all of that water that used to run into the ground now goes elsewhere. So I think we are also recognizing that in the fire hazards that have come along in North America. So that's not, again, we're not talking about water use there, but what we're talking about is that lack of moisture that kind of goes through the whole system. And we've certainly suffered from a lot of wildfires in our province, I think somewhat attributed to those kinds of systems and changes to the climate. So rainwater harvesting has happened through use of rain barrels, as well as more sophisticated systems of capture. And it's certainly part of, and the green roofs that we implement, these are part of our One Water system as well.
Great, thank you.
Yes, Dwayne, go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Thanks, Mr. Heidi, great presentation. I joined late, so it's mind-boggling and amazing at the same time, the innovation put in. In the Caribbean, just a couple questions. One, how do you do? You said the maintenance, or I should say preventative maintenance. Rather periodically. In the winter seasons, how you deal with that? Also, one, and two, the infrastructure as far as the civil infrastructure. Some parts of the Caribbean isn't as because you say you repave roads and everything like that to make sure that the water goes in at a preferred point. What are the costs concerning that? Did you do any MOUs, and I'm guessing that you would have had great discussions with the city itself. How how would that because some there are some strained relationships with us in the
Yeah.
Caribbean. So
Okay.
how would that how have that been with you in terms of the discussions with the city?
Okay.
How can we implement that in our sphere?
Okay, I think that's a great point. I can quickly tell you about the maintenance. Um, so even like the slide I have up here with well, maybe we're not sharing it anymore. Anyway, the smaller bioretention systems are quite easy to keep up because, an important part of them is removing the sediment that comes into into the inlet. Um, so that can be done by someone with a shovel. And the vegetation maintenance, again, it's not very specialized. It can just about anyone can be trained to kind of cut the vegetation the right way and keep the bioswale. So that's my second point. These systems can be really simple. In fact, like some form of a ditch can really be bioretention, right? If it's a grassy ditch. But what it does is it has the ability to allow the water to collect and stay put. Um, so working with others, I think that community piece can be a real good linchpin to connect cities with other groups and maybe utilities that otherwise would not always be on the same page. Um, that's the schools. That was another reason that we really are connecting with the schools because those are pieces of our community that bring us all together and in a really collaborative way. We also have the luck of having our working in a city where our utility and our water systems are embedded with the same groups that pave the roads and do the concrete work. So we've really worked collaboratively with them to explain to our crews how we would like the civil works done, the form work done, how we would like the grading done. And that's been easier for us because we all work for the same municipal group. Valerie, you have your hand up?
Yes,
Yes,
Valerie.
one thing in the Caribbean is mosquitoes. And I'm
Mhm.
just wondering, I mean, we have mosquitoes in Vancouver, but not anywhere near what they have at certain times of the year in the Caribbean.
Mhm.
Would there be a lot of standing water here, or would there be the flow? Because if there's a lot of standing water, that might be problematic.
That's a really good question and one we get as well. In fact, we monitor our systems to understand how long the water stands there. And we actually have great success because they are engineered. We have a drawdown time that we don't expect water to be standing in them for more than 24 hours. And with our new designs, that has been the case. So the thing that you get with this kind of system is you're designing it to have like granular soils underneath that can allow the water to infiltrate past the surface into the subsurface and then gradually into the soils surrounding them. Yeah.
Doreen again, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, just a question that came to mind. Also, as far as the topography of the land, Heidi, most of the cities in the Caribbean are, uh, almost sea level.
Hmm.
How would that go with the city as far as the topography? But I'm not too sure the topography of Vancouver, if it's almost
Yeah.
in a height or, so how would that go in that regard?
That's a good question because it can be challenging if you don't have much for grades and you're wanting to have some element of flow. But, these are aspects that we are able to design, like we'll choose one of the tools that makes more sense, like maybe it would be a tank that would detain the water under the surface, and then allow it to seep in over time, sort of like a French drain. So that's a possibility as well. um, but you're right. We make different selections and we actually mimic our selections, I would say, based on like the natural kinds of watershed elements. So you're going to have smaller collecting kind of almost like stream branches at the very top of your topography in the top of the watershed. And then you're going to need bigger systems with more capacity as you go down in the water, down in topography and down towards the sea. We too have like we're a coastal city, so one really popular thing that we're nature-based solution we're experimenting with are kind of living dikes where several plants are planted, and they kind of are an engineered way of creating those marshlands that would have traditionally been in place. We're trying to reconstruct that in different locations in our region to see if that can help with some of those coastal erosion issues, as well as the stormwater that's coming down from the uplands.
Right. I don't see any more hands up at this stage. So, or Tom, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was actually very impressed with that you started with the First Nation, recognizing the First Nation people. I think that's quite well organized, recognized, and now developed in Canada. And you mentioned also drought and wildfires, but the wildfires are also a result of poor or improper or forestry.
Yes.
Planting spruce against the wishes of the First Nation, or the advice. But if you do this, you will get wildfires. That's decades ago. Eventually, when we got all these big wildfires, they now realize you have to mix evergreens with oaks and beech and ever to reduce the spread. So now I understand the change the forestry law, and the First Nations are now the stewards of forestry management in Canada, just to reduce the wildfires. You also mentioned the concern about groundwater pollution because of the stormwater runoff. And my experience is that, depending, of course, on the geohydrological conditions, but in urban environments, groundwater pollution is most often overrated, because the groundwater is not used for drinking purposes.
Yeah.
In most cases. So you have groundwater pollution, but basically,
right, so what?
Who cares? You don't say that. But groundwater pollution, prevention of groundwater pollution is not a cause in itself. It eventually is that you don't want people to drink tainted or polluted or toxic groundwater. So, and especially in the Caribbean and coastal areas, coastal groundwater pollution is not an issue because we don't drink it, but it is an issue for the coral reefs, the coastal zone, because you have influx of the water from the land into the ocean. So, and the nutrients are a major contributing factor to the decline of the reefs in the Caribbean, especially nutrients from sanitation. And as last, I want to, when you started the presentation, I was thinking of the Paris Olympics. If I don't know if people saw the connection, but when the Olympic Committee or the French government started organizing the Olympics, they insisted of having the triathlon swim event in the Seine.
Yep.
But the Seine is one of these combined sewer overflow repositories. So, and they had to make, and you cannot really change the sewer system because that's happened. And although a lot of treatment was improved, but eventually the conclusion was we can swim in the Seine if we have at least 2 weeks of dry weather before the Olympics.
Right.
Before the marathon, the triathlon event. And unfortunately, it rained a few days before the marathon event. So the Seine River water was too high in coliform counts because of the combined sewer overflow. Yeah.
That's right. That really put the issue on the stage, on the world stage, didn't it? Something that people don't really think about all of a
Exactly.
sudden. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, it's
Yeah.
important. Certainly.
And
And you're right. Like, I think in places where we have the fortune to not have to draw on our groundwater, we really need to think about the ecological systems
yeah,
that
the
do receive those
ecosystems.
waters, right? It does have an effect.
Yeah.
So, but as humans, we seem to kind of take care of our own needs sometimes first and
Yeah.
forget about
No,
forget about what else happens.
but that's why I think that the psychological impact of this green infrastructure brings nature and the environment, of which we are all part, because
Hmm.
we are an expression of our environment. We eat, drink, and breathe it, basically. And our molecules come from things we eat. So, and that brings it close to the people, especially to the urban people who have no clue. They're saying tomatoes grow in the supermarket.
Yes. Well, I'll leave you with our website because we do have some standards and some things you could look at because I think that that community connection, it could be just as small as like declaring that you want to have a little bioswale somewhere and you get people involved in planting it and caring for it. It can be quite powerful and it can really bring
Yes.
people together. We've seen that for sure here in Vancouver. Yeah.
No, that's true. That's true.
Well,
I
he
I'm
said,
retired, and the one thing I really like most is taking care of my aquarium and having the fish make baby fish. And I love making that possible.
Yeah.
As a man, that is,
There's something that is very satisfying for humans to
yeah,
care for
it's
something like that. It's true.
life.
one thing Heidi mentioned earlier is about how sometimes, after some of these events, our beaches are closed for swimming.
Yeah.
So that is something that I've always looked at in the Caribbean because we have very, very highly regulated systems here. And yet, with all the treatment and all this work we do, we still have closures on the beaches. And
In the Caribbean?
no, in
Oh,
Vancouver.
Vancouver.
Whereas in the Caribbean, where there is very little wastewater treatment in many countries, um, I don't know that I've ever seen a beach closed.
Let me tell you.
That was
Let
an
me tell you.
economic factor.
I was
Okay,
based
Tom,
in
all right,
St.
Tom, don't go too far.
No, I will not go too far. I will not go too
Right.
far. I was based at sea in St. Lucia 35 years ago. And they did a study on beach water quality. And we wanted to introduce the European beach water quality guideline. And it is based on fecal coliform and E. coli content. And we were not able to further develop criteria in the Caribbean. And they did a lot of beach water quality monitoring. And I will not repeat the results in this seminar.
Okay, so we have gone to the hour. I'd like to thank all of you for joining and for your lively contributions, and thank you, Heidi, as we find and sharing with us designs for nature-based solutions and greening the cities, and of course, helping to design urban spaces, bearing in mind the impacts on health, human health, and then the environment generally. So we wish to thank you for this immensely. And I know Chris Corbin always speaks to us about the one water solutions, and then we have about the circular economy and so on. So I think there's a lot of material here and food for thought as we continue to discuss anything from A to Z with the water sector in the Caribbean. So thank you again to our sponsors, Operators
Thank
Without
you.
Borders, for
Wonderful.
making this possible, and to Heidi and to all of you who joined us this afternoon. And as we indicated, we are getting ready for the CAWASA Water Operators Conference in St. Vincent, June 25th to the 27th. So for the next couple of weeks, we will not be holding any sessions until further notice, and we'll get back to you. Thank you. Have a good
Thanks
evening,
so much.
everyone.